Hello, everybody. This is Stephen Whitfield with Drilling Contractor here at the 2022 SPE IADC Managed Pressure Drilling and Underbalance Operations Conference in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. With me right now is André Alonso Fernandes, drilling engineer at Petrobras. And we're going to be speaking about a presentation that André just gave here on sort of running Monte Carlo simulations and looking at historical data to sort of better understand MPD usage. André, thank you so much for speaking with me today.
Thank you for calling me here for the interview.
So one of the things that you talked about in your presentation was the optimal number of MPD rigs on a drilling operation. Can you go into a little bit the work that Petrobras did to sort of figure out that optimal number? I guess the Monte Carlo simulations will be kind of the thing here.
There is no optimal number for a particular field. You have to do it a simulation, as you said. You have to do a Monte Carlo simulation considering different factors, like the distribution of how many of the time that you have, depending on what is your P10, P50, and P90 on the distribution. You also have to include what is the penalty for using or not using MPD. So depending on which field and which campaign, and the date of the campaign, you're going to have an optimal number. So that's something that we usually do for future campaigns.
What are some of the factors that go into determining that optimal number for a given campaign?
You have to use what is the prediction of wells, the percentage of wells with losses, if they have heavy losses or conventional losses that you can come back to using calcite pills or cement. You also can you have to see what is the current MPD penalty. So what is the time that an MPD rig is going to add to compared to a conventional rig, considering that you don't face any troubles? And also what is the overall penalty to change it, to swap a rig from the campaign? So if, let's say, you start conventional well, drilling the well conventionally and have to abandon the well to drill the rest of the well to TD using an MPD rig, all those numbers add up, so you can run a simulation running different scenarios. Based on these scenarios, then you end up with the optimum numbers for a campaign.
Interesting that you bring up this MPD penalty. That seemed to draw a bit of interest here at the presentation today. Could you explain kind of what can we do to help reduce MPD penalty?
Well, I'm talking about offshore operations, deep water offshore operations, where the main factor would be the MPD riser joint. The MPD riser joint is, if you look at the raw numbers, is one of the factors that adds most of these penalties. Added to it, I would say there's also the limiting factors of tripping in, tripping out, and some additional procedures like fingerprinting and other procedures that you do when drilling with MPD.
So one thing you discussed here at the conference was about expanding the use of MPD on non-MPD wells or other wells. You said that we need to adopt some new procedures and practices to help do that. First question on that would be, what's the value of expanding the use of MPD onto other wells?
Well, if you have 100% assurance that you won't need MPD on a conventional well, you don't need the MPD. The great question is when you are in the gray zone, when you're unsure if you're going to need or not MPD. Some people are conservative and go with the MPD with the conventional rigs. Other people want to pay as an insurance and use the MPD rigs too. But in order to optimize this number of wells using MPD, so you don't have problems, as mentioned during the presentation, you don't have big problems, you don't have to delay your campaign, you deliver the wells on the predicted time, you can use MPD. As factors or procedures would be the simplification of use MPD, so you don't add additional activities, or you can trip at the same speeds before. So that would require some development, procedural developments, and also hardware developments in order to achieve the point that the industry could better use MPD on a wider range, so it would be more economical and also safer.
You mentioned procedure development. So what would some of this development be? What are some of these procedures that we can adapt?
One example of procedure would be the fingerprinting that could be simplified and to be run in parallel in order to properly get the value of the system. So you don't add this additional time to the operation. The fingerprinting, it is a valuable action. If you don't do it in parallel, you should do it, because it is the information on how your system performs and how to properly, and it's going to allow you to properly use the MPD system to the most of its capacity. But there are some actions that you can do that are going to reduce the MPD at a time, or for instance, how you trip, or if you need or not to close the BOP while you're tripping out with the BAJ, if you need to swap the fluid inside the well. All those factors, they add up, and in the end, you have the number. So if you add a lot of numbers, I want to do this, and that, in the end, it's a huge number, and that's going to be a huge penalty, and it's not likely that it is a good value or a good proposition to use MPD.
Well, André, thank you so much for taking the time again. This is a valuable conversation, as evidenced by the interest in the presentation today. So it's great that you're able to share some of this insight with our viewers. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.
And thank you for visiting Drilling Contractor.